And tonight we talk with Kimmy Gray.
Kimmy Gray.
And our special guest, Kimmy Gray, who's an example of what public house residents can do.
Gray,
How you doing?
you did this in your housing complex in your neighborhood. You did it with little money and with a good filter for phoniness. How's your filter working?
Filter's working excellent. In fact, our Metropolitan Police Department and our chief is working very closely with the public housing residents.
I represent welfare recipients and residents of public housing, not only in Washington, D.C., but throughout the entire country.
Kimmy Gray, describe Washington, D.C.
Being that I'm a native Washingtonian, I think it's the best city in the entire United States. I mean, where else can you live in the capital of the United States? I enjoy this city so much because it's the first city that I've had a chance to not only live in, but to work in, where grassroots people are given the opportunity to be a part of the decision-making process.
To me, she was a visionary, a great example of Black excellence, self-reliant, one of the most inspiring women that ever graced the streets of D.C.
She's faced the hardest times you could imagine. And many times her eyes fall back the tears, Lord, Lord. And when her useful world was about to fall in, each time her slender shoulders felt the weight of all the fears, and a sorrow no one hears still rings in midnight silence in her ear. Let her cry, for she's a lady. Let her dream, for she is a child.
Miss Kimmy was born in 1945. She spent most of her childhood in public housing, raised by her mother and grandmother. Her father died when she was just 7, but regardless of her family's struggles early on, what her grandmother instilled in her was ambition.
My grandmother always told us that you could not just be good as, but better than, and in doing so, you had to make sure people clearly understood what you wanted.
And Miss Kimmy showed signs of leadership by standing out when she was young. Situations like her first grade teacher making her a substitute teacher.
I've always believed in myself, too.
She was strong-willed just like her grandmother, which she would need for the hardships she had to face, because by age 14, she had her first child, and by 16, she was on her third child and dropped out of high school. Eventually, she got married. So she turned her focus to family and marriage, and by the time she was 19, she then had 5 children but was now divorced. And so she went on welfare. In 1966, at 21 years old, she got an apartment around Kenilworth, full name Kenilworth Parkside, a public housing community in the northeast section of the city, for those who don't know. A neighborhood where my family once lived in the 90s, and the reason why I chose to break these Kenilworth videos down into 2 videos. Like most projects, Kenilworth has and still faces issues today. And Kenilworth covers more than just the public housing section, but this is not a landscape video about how gangster it is and how much it covers. We could save all that for a second part. So Miss Kimmy settled in, and although she was young and divorced with 5 kids on welfare, she was a hard worker. She never gave up on herself. She went back to school and got her diploma and later an associate's degree in business. So she worked for the DC Department of Recreation, but her calling was to do much more, and it started with witnessing the mismanagement of the projects. The conditions of public housing in the city has been a disaster, even today. It's a circus going on with the housing authority. So much that a separate video can be made on a history of DC housing.
A couple of weeks ago, we reported how hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent on public housing in Washington, D.C., described by the federal government as the worst in the nation in just about every way.
Tonight on the filthy and dangerous living conditions in D.C. public housing. Now, Brenda Donald has to also answer to HUD, which calls D.C. Housing Authority among the worst in the country.
Back in the day, there was controversy around housing surrounding money being stolen and resources given away to family, friends, and associates.
Not all of it went to help the tenants. Some employees embezzled funds. Some executives at headquarters spent $1 million furnishing their offices. Some administrators spent thousands more sending delegates to Puerto Rico for a workshop.
The Housing Authority has been through so many regimes, many times firing and hiring. Miss Kimmy Gray actually had the dream of taking control of the project since the 60s.
And we talking self-sufficiency. We talking responsibility. That's not the thing that traditionally poor people talk.
She knew a change was necessary. She had the vision, and around Kenilworth, Miss Kimmy and 4 others went door to door. Her intention was to find like-minded individuals to gather and speak about what they could do as a unit, to get the powers that be to relinquish the power of the community. The powers that be was a private management company brought on by housing. And for whatever reason, they wasn't doing the job right. So the idea was, let us, the residents, manage this public housing community. Your way is not working, so let us try. So by 1972, the residents formed a citizens council and they nominated Miss Kimmy as president, who was very vocal, an excellent speaker, and more importantly, she actually cared, especially when it came to the youth. Miss Kimmy and other residents even founded a scholarship program called College Here We Come, where they help young folks get funding for college. And the Washington Post wrote this in 1979. College Here We Come is a no-nonsense organization. Since it was set up in 1974 by 4 Kenilworth Courts residents, the group has helped 112 high school graduates go to college. And then Miss Kimmy stated, in the first year, we sent 17 young black people to college, and at least 12 of them are going to graduate next year. In 20 years total, they helped more than 1,000 students with tuition. Some of these students at the time never left the projects and never left DC. There was no social media or the internet where they could see the world and how other people lived outside the city. Some of them literally only knew the housing projects they lived in. So to go from that to taking that bus ride or plane ride to a new place where they talk different and dress different was more than likely a big shock, a culture shock. And things are so much different now. The resources that we have today at our disposal, the average person couldn't have seen it coming back then, not in the 70s. You had to wait for a taxi cab when you needed a ride. Now there's an Uber 3 minutes away. You could type in millionaire lifestyle and watch the daily life of a wealthy person. You can FaceTime a relative in Africa and see their face while you're talking to them. If you need money, young men can easily enter plumbing and electric trades, even with felony charges on their records. And they can do so by simply typing in the local plumbers union or the local electric union. And they can become helpers and first-year apprentices with no experience. And in a year or two, they making more money than anyone they know. But that's another story. Let's continue. So by the time the mayor, Marion Barry, hit the office in '79, Miss Kimmy was already a strong supporter of his, even helping him get in office. In fact, she went on to become a part of the mayor's public housing residence advisory group. The mayor had appointed her as president of that group. She was making noise, but I gotta keep it real. She never said I. She always said we, and always gave credit to the people who are in the trenches with her.
When I say me, I truly mean we. The dream Kimmy Gray had in the beginning, and that was way back in the 60s, was that we should manage our property.
And always gave credit to those who were in the trenches with her, people whose voices weren't as loud but still shared the same values. So because of how organized they was, not only that, but the consistency, keeping the foot on them people's neck, an alliance with the mayor who supported them, becoming a real grassroots force to be reckoned with, they won. In 1982, the contract was signed, one of the first of its kind, literally the first in DC. Miss Kimmy and the Resident Management Corporation won control over the projects. If you control the money or the budget, you can control the conditions. Miss Kimmy went from being a single black mother of 5 in the projects to managing a budget of more than $1 million a year. She said she wanted to own the plantation, i.e. the projects, and that's where the idea came for them to not only manage, but to fight to give the residents a chance to own the places they lived in. They were some bad mother.
Shut your mouth. And I ain't playing, nigga.
And then the real work began. Everybody had to pull their weight. Healthcare, remodeling, trash pickup, everything and everyone needed attention. Kenilworth began to look different from other public housing communities at the time.
Don't compare us to no place you live.
Older people took pride in their property, cleaning and mowing the lawn. Attitude reflect leadership.
On the American agenda tonight, we're going to take another look at the question of affordable and safe housing for America's poorer citizens. Some time ago, we looked at a plan to take the thousands of government-run housing projects, which are by and large run down and often dangerous, and turn them over to the tenants so they could manage them on their own. Tonight, making it possible for the tenants to actually become the building's owners. Our agenda reporter is Rebecca Chase.
The change is striking. It is more than landscaping, renovated apartments, or brand new playgrounds. Drug use and crime are down. Most people here are off welfare. Fewer teenagers get pregnant, and many more go to college.
I think when you live in a decent community, a clean community, you'll find that everybody has a different feel about themselves, and they should.
Come down to see you.
Kimmy Gray has been leading residents here since 1982, when they took over the management of Kenilworth Parkside, a public housing project in Washington, D.C. The transformation took place over the next 10 years, as residents set up support services funded by the government,
Dropped out in 11th grade.
education and health programs, daycare, after school and recreation activities. In an effort to provide jobs and income, the residents started a cleaning service, a moving company, a maintenance and trash collection business, all staffed by people who live here. Even teenagers have a snack bar they run after school.
We have changed our lives around. We have something to offer our children.
As their lives improved, the residents wanted more. The transition to owning their own homes began 3 years ago. The government started renovating the project at a cost of $25 million, and then sold it for $1 to the private corporation formed by the residents. Eventually, families will have the opportunity to buy their own apartments.
It's really nice to be able to have your own yard and be able to plant your flowers, and you can say, this is mine.
Lucy Henderson, who has lived here 23 years, appreciates the changes. Although she spent most of her life on welfare, now she has a part-time job as a cook and has returned to school. 3 of her children have gone to college.
Don't compare us to no place you live. It's totally different here.
The first 132 families have moved back in following the renovations, and new families are being screened for the vacancies. They are presented with a strict set of rules, including a curfew for children and regular inspections.
We went through so much to get what we've got. We learned to take care of it. You know, we say we want to live like homeowners. We got to act like homeowners.
When you look around here, it is hard to see why anyone would oppose the tenant initiatives proposed by the Bush administration. In fact, there is some criticism of the high cost of renovation here, but most critics focus on the fact that the $1 billion proposal does not go far enough.
My bedroom.
Giving the poor a chance to own their own homes gives them a stake in their communities and could save significant tax dollars if rent subsidies are no longer needed. But in the meantime, the president's plan is so limited, the urgent needs of millions go largely ignored.
By 1986, a company did an audit on Kenilworth and found that since the tenants were given control over the management, rent collection went up 77%, which was 7 times the increase at public housing citywide. The vacancy rates decreased. Ms. Kimmy and the Resident Management Corporation helped more than 100 residents get off welfare, get jobs, and even hiring summer staff. The report concluded that after 4 years, the resident management saved the city over $700,000. She took back the projects. They took back the projects. What's more gangster than that? From humble beginnings to being the national treasure, even co-founding the National Association of Resident Management Corporation, and served as chairwoman of board of directors. That means they took the same format they use locally and turned it into a national thing. She wanted people to become self-reliant, man. She stood on the White House lawn fighting for people. She held the mayor down after that hotel thing because she understood his struggle and kept the same energy. She had an easy access to a lucrative career in politics, but declined it and decided to remain at the grassroots level, close to the people, in the middle of the trenches, all the way until she passed away in 2000. Miss Kimmy was the wildflower. By urban definition, uncultivated by the mainstream, independent thinker, bravely growing wild and free in a world plagued by conformity.
We have 1 minute left. This is the beginning of 1990. We bring our camera crews back at the beginning of 2000. What will we see here, and what will we see with you?
Oh, God. I'm hoping you'll see me about 100 pounds lighter. We'll start with that. But you'll see a completely rehabbed community where complete home ownership has taken place. You'll see an environment of a residential community like you will see in any other residential community. You'll see small businesses. You'll see a mini mall adjacent to our property. You'll see the housing complex adjacent to ours that we just purchased, completely rehabbed and sold off as condos to my college students that are coming back now.
You're my flower. Ooh, baby. A flower. You're my